Well, welcome everybody. Excited to have everyone back for Founder-Led Sales. Today I'm joined by Erdem Gelal from Flowla, founder. Excited to have you here, Erdem.
Hi, Seth. Thank you for having me. Happy to be here.
So we caught up a little bit before, and I have lots of questions for you and some exciting stuff. We might even do some sparring on this interview. But let's dive right in. Could you give us a quick background on what Flowla is?
Sure. Flowla is a digital sales room platform. So we work with sales and customer success teams and help them create client-facing workspaces that they use during sales and onboarding implementation. So basically, it would help you get to yes by putting together everything your buyer would need in one personalized link, and getting to use by putting all the resources and action plans during onboarding implementation without overwhelming your buyers in the first place.
I love it. So going all the way back to the beginning, as you search for product market fit, what was your first iteration of this, or what was your first vision of? I'm sure it was not nearly as polished as you just described it as. What was the first version of your product or of Flowla?
So the brand name Flowla is actually coming from the idea of a flow, which was the only available .com domain around the word flow. We wanted a .com domain because we knew that our users would create links generated by our product, so we wanted the domain to look good, to be short, and to be a .com one. We liked the idea of a flow. At first, what we thought was it would be a stream of content similar to Instagram stories, where you would create a link and then you would have different videos even, and then you would create a narrative to convey a message across for B2B sales or for any other purpose that would require you to send multiple materials. But then we realized, okay, this could work great with videos, but this could also work great with other stuff because people wanted to upload PDF documents there. So we realized, okay, maybe this is like a client portal that people upload different content,
Okay.
which made a lot of sense. And then we realized,
How did
okay,
you, sorry, before you, I want to slice this up a little bit and dive
yes,
deeper.
please.
So you had these realizations, you're looking back on it like it's quite obvious and it was quite smooth and it happened quickly. How did you find this out? How did you do the market testing? How did you kind of bring your first kind of flows concept to market?
So my previous company, this is the third time I'm building a company. First one was a music startup. This was back 12 years ago. Very sexy product at the time, great traction, terrible commercials, so it failed. And then we started another company. This started as a marketplace, but turned into a sales tech solution, which did something very similar to Flowla. We were reselling B2B deals, and we needed a product to put all the sales process into one link. So we would generate links. The proposal would be there. The recipient would either accept or reject the proposal. If accepted, they would fill in their contract details. We would generate the contract PDF. They would e-sign it. And then we sold the company to a French company called Group Up after 3.5 years of starting it. And we realized there's huge value here. So by bringing together everything, every fragmented step that your customers go through, there's value here, especially when it's natively integrated to your CRM. We were using Salesforce at the time and we were generating those links through Salesforce. And that's how Flowla was born. So we were invested in the idea of having a client-facing extension to your CRM because we knew the CRMs needed to be very internal focused products. So we decided to build the client-facing extension of it. And usually those processes are like journeys that you want to handhold your clients through, which we decided to call a flow, and that's how the idea was born.
But when you started talking to customers and pitching this idea of these flows, was people on board and they're like, yeah, we'll pay for that, and then you started to realize that they wanted to use it differently, or at first they're like, nah, like how did that happen?
So there was a long period where I actually sold my previous business and my co-founder was still in his full-time job. So that gave us the room to be super chilled and do a long period of customer discovery. During that process, we actually landed a few very active users that later turned into paid clients. So we started shaping the product around what they started asking us. Just to visualize it, we just had content, but people wanted to align on next steps, right? So we said, okay, there should be next steps. First, there were checkboxes. Then we realized that those next steps things should actually be a lot more complex. So we built this almost like a project management module within our product that would let you assign tasks, visualize them in Kanban boards and everything. So all of this revolved around what the most active users or the paying users started asking us, which formed the pattern.
So there was a vision that was formed from your second company.
Mm-hmm.
You'd already seen this. So you knew there was something there. And then you were able to pitch the idea to enough folks or buyers or prospects that they were willing to pay for the initial concept. And then based on their feedback, you iterated the product to make it far more robust than what it is today.
That would be a great summary. I
Yeah, I
think
mean,
you did a better job
makes
than
it
I
sound
did.
so much easier. Yeah. It was that easy. Why doesn't everybody do this? Okay. So tell me about getting those first meetings, those first sales efforts in your founder-led sales journey.
So one area that I consider myself rather lucky is that I'm not a salesperson. This may
I
sound
don't know how to
weird.
take that.
This may sound controversial, but it actually is true. Like I've been a product person all my life. Built product. I never did engineering, but I've worked on products. So my obsession was listening to people, turning them into turning those into ideas and turning those into products that people can actually use and will get value out of, right? And then being a product person requires you to have empathy, requires you to observe what they're talking about and observe the underlying need behind that. And it also allows you to treat the sales process as a product itself, which keeps iterating, which keeps changing. You don't have any ideas that are set in stone that you're super extremely opinionated about, but you're more like observing how it runs out and how it works, and you're improving on the go. Since we had that time at the very beginning, I could easily tap into my network, land a bunch of meetings, which were mostly client discovery meetings, talk to people about their problems. Not every problem maps to what we're building, but it's good learning. Now I understood their jargon, now I'm talking their language. And then some of them are super excited about the product, so I just invite them. One thing I learned throughout this journey is doing this in an invitation basis way. So meaning when I try to push people, hey, that was a great conversation, you should be definitely using our product kind of thing. No, it turns people
Well, it
off.
sounds salesy, right?
That sounds very salesy. And since I'm not a salesperson, whenever I try to be salesy, I do a terrible job.
Yeah, I don't know, but I think anybody trying to be salesy does a terrible job.
I don't know. I question myself a lot for this. So where I found success in founder-led sales is doing everything in an invite basis way. Hey, we're hosting this party Saturday night. Here's the invitation. If it fits what you had in mind, welcome. If not, yeah, I'll see you some other time. And when we started doing this, and when the people we showed up, we cared about, started showing up, that was the sign of things. That was a sign that we were building the right thing. It's now a very complex example, a very complex analogy, but I'm sure you get the idea.
No, I think it's brilliant. I actually think that's the genesis of sales, is getting people really excited and then giving them the option to decide, right? Anybody being forced to you got to do this, no one wants to do that, right? Immediately you're like, I don't want to do what you're telling me to do. But if you get people excited and then give them the option, they're going to decide anyway. And empowering them with that decision, I think, makes a lot of sense. It's also, yeah, even if you could trick them or convince them to buy. We interviewed Mac Redden from ComStore, and he was saying very similar to your kind of experience, but he wants people to pull the product from him, right? He was getting research. He wanted them to pull it. He didn't want to have to sell it to them. And when they were pulling it, then he was onto something. But if they're not pulling it from you, right, all the salesmanship in the world isn't going to make it a successful product.
Another example could be imagine yourself in a summer town and there's this restaurant that you want to go that night. Everyone recommends it. It has 4.8 on Google Maps rating. And then on your way to that restaurant, a lot of people stop you, promoters of different restaurants that don't look that good. They're say, hey, they're giving you flyers, they're telling you about their menu and everything. But you still ignore them. You just want to get to the restaurant that you had in mind, that you fought to have a reservation at. So that's actually where you should be, being
Yes.
that restaurant, not having promoters on the street that push people and somehow occasionally land a few clients which don't look so happy.
I like that. So now that you've going back to your journey, you've gotten some customers early on. You get more clarity and features. Basically, your roadmap's starting to be shaped by your paying customers that are happy and using your product. How did you start to acquire more customers? How did you kind of transition from that, hey, we have product market fit or appears to, how do we start acquiring customers with some repeatability?
So we sell to sales and CS teams. Probably the answer to this question depends a lot based on who you're selling to, because you want to be spending time in places where they are spending their time. For us, it was LinkedIn and different like value-adding content pieces. For example, first time we did a huge content piece was Christmas, like just before Christmas of 23, I guess. Decided to do a project called the Sales Almanac. What we did was we gathered the most engaged posts of the year about sales in the LinkedIn sales space. But we didn't just prepare a list. We tied all of them together. Imagine different data points on the map. We connected the dots and turned all those posts into a story that you could actually read through.
Okay.
Meaning, hey, this was how the year went. It first started with focus on data-driven actions, and then people really cared about AI and they talked about this type of thing. And it became a huge hit because most of the people that we mentioned, that we took their posts from, they started organically sharing this project, which would otherwise have cost us a lot of money if we wanted to work as influencers with each and every one of them. And so that was super organic reach. That was the exact target audience that we wanted to address. So first early days, long story short, we tried to be creative around the content that we're producing. And we tried to do some value-adding stuff. People love tactical things. People love interesting things. So that's what we try to do. I don't think we're still great at those things, but now we passed 100 paying clients, which is probably a good sign.
So, first step was creating this ecosystem of people who knew you by creating content that was thoughtful and tactical and meaningful to your persona, buyer persona, or your ICP, and then started driving some inbound leads into, I guess, how did that go? Into meetings with you, or who started doing all of the selling? Or inviting, if you will.
Yeah, so I'll tell you about that. So one mistake that we did in the early days, that I used to have a huge belief in the fact that product-led growth could work for us. So we had a self-search sign up. We had, of course, had automated welcome sequences that we enrolled every sign up into. If anyone booked a meeting, we'd just show the product and end the meeting saying, hey, this is the product. Now that you've seen it, if you want to use it, please go ahead and sign up on our website. I'm here if you have any questions. So invite only to the full extent, which didn't work well. So maybe around 10 months or a year, we were very invested in this motion. We first started to support it with a more support to sales assisted motion, and then we moved into a full handheld experiment, which generated great results. So one thing I realized, when your category is not a very known one, if your product is building outbound email sequences, and if there are a lot of people that are searching on Google for outbound email sequences, how to build them, which product is the most effective, which lands on inboxes and such, PLG works for you. But for us, we were creating a new category. Digital sales rooms, like 2 years ago, wasn't as popular as it is today. So we realized that there's a chasm that people need to jump. And another thing, probably specific to our product, is that there's a lot of effort you need to invest until you start realizing the value. So there's a sort of asymmetry between effort invested and value generated, because you need to be creating a template. You need to be adding stuff to your sales room, building that link, and you need to send it to your customers. And then you start seeing, okay, Seth looked at it for 2 minutes. Great. Oh, Seth shared it with Matthew. Perfect. Now I should multiply with Matthew. But for all this value to be seen, you need to put in the effort first. So it was on us to help you jump through that chasm until you start seeing the value and really enjoy the product. So what we did, we hired our CSM. Delia, she's still with us. She's doing an amazing job. And we started helping our clients. Again, with a restaurant example. So we assumed we are in the hospitality business. It is our job to make people enjoy this dinner whatever. If they need menu suggestions, we'll give them menu suggestions. If they need help creating that first template, yeah, we know best practices. We will give them the help of creating that first template. And that's like, if you look at our revenue graph, you would see a little slope for a few months, and then you would see this inflection point and everything starts going up. That's when we started doing a lot more hand-holding compared to how we approached it before that.
I think it's fascinating that you go back to the product mindset, that even with your services, and I think many companies are trying to package up their services based on what they think is best. Even your services were reactive. I mean, you made mistakes, but you learned quickly, but your services were packaged up and productized to exactly what the clients wanted, not what you thought they wanted. I mean, I guess you started with what you thought, but then you iterated quite quickly based on what they actually wanted. And I think that's, you're trying to get to the truth of like, how will they enjoy their meal the most or get the value from your product as fast as possible?
Like, it's easier said than done, because every one of us we love to play on the God model. We visualize solutions. We never problems first. We always trying to build a system that will generate results that would work, but we don't think about what's actually needed. What problem are we solving? What outcomes are we producing for the customers? So it's like you always have to repeat that to yourselves. And we still do it today, like every day. We repeat that to ourselves just so that we don't rush into anything that is not wanted or requested or needed by our customers, current and future.
I love it. So when it was time to kind of hire a salesperson, you didn't hire a salesperson, you hired a customer success person. And that customer success person is doing much of what a salesperson would do, at least on the from the discovery to close. It sounds like it sounds like she's not creating opportunities, but she's guiding opportunities with sales assist through your kind of product-led growth motion. How did you decide on that?
I think we had a lucky and successful experiment at the same time. So we were at times it was strategically well planned, and we were at times lucky. So we definitely, like, the decision to bring in as customer success person before a salesperson was like, it was planned, because what we wanted is to have a discovery call where we identify the pain, where we make sure the product is solving that problem. And then we created a next step in our sales process where the prospect is joining a workshop meeting with our CSM and is working on building their first template. So that workshop meeting is a very hands-on one. They ask questions, they get responses, they meet the person who will be helping them once they become a customer. So it's like a real-life simulation of how their relationship with Flowla could turn out.
No, it's not even a simulation.
It is a simulation, because it is a simulation in the sense that usually after that workshop meeting, which lasts 30 minutes, sometimes 45, you don't have something ready, polished to be sent to your customers. So you need to put in the effort yourself. You need to fine tune it probably after that meeting. So if you're proactive enough, you do it on your own time. If you're not, we try to help you with that as well. But involving the CSM in the sales process with the CSM title, saying this is a workshop meeting, this is the person who will help you with everything you need once you become a customer. Now, even helping you before you become a customer and showing you how it's done, it worked great for us. And then at some point, I started blocking new demo calls. Like, we got complaints because people were looking at the demo calendar on our website and didn't see any availabilities for the next couple of days. And that was the point where we realized, okay, we should do something about it. Instead of bringing in a salesperson, I asked Delia, hey, like, do you think like you could even go one step before in the buyer's journey and do discovery calls? This is a tricky point because I still do think there are different character sets. Like, the customer success persona, like I'm going to generalize big time here, please don't judge me for it, is usually a more people pleaser person compared to a salesperson. A people pleaser person is not very comfortable having the uncomfortable discussions, right? Like pricing and everything else. Whereas a salesperson would do that. They would negotiate. They know how to say no. Whereas they don't like to say no to many things, but they know where they should be saying no. Whereas a CSM would be acting different. Anyhow, I think our experiment with Ellie went pretty good. So now she's closing deals that I'm even not in. I've never met those clients, but she's bringing in revenue, closing and onboarding and doing like full cycle stuff. But once this started happening, we signed a client, maybe like a month or two after we started experimenting this. We signed a new client, we got the payment. They had a 30-day opt-out clause in their contract. Around the 26th day, we received this email, we want our money back, we want to opt out and everything, because we failed to activate them. So we were so focused on new pipeline, even with all our client-facing resources, including our CSM, that we forgot to fully activate, to fully be present for a new customer. So that was the warning sign. We still didn't say, okay, this is not working, let's roll back. We said, okay, this is strike one. When we have strike three, we will do something about it. So we're still waiting for strike two to happen. We're still at that stage where we don't have a AE yet in the team. It's me doing founder sales, our CSM helping me, and we're currently establishing a BDR team to help generate more pipeline.
I think there's a few takeaways that you're doing excellently that I think are worth highlighting. The client having to show up, or the prospect having to show up to the workshop for 30 minutes and actually do work, is a great qualification criteria, because if they don't show up for that, or they're not interested in doing that, they're not going to buy your product. And you know they won't buy your product anyway if they don't do that, because there's no way they're going to be successful on their own. So they have to do that, which really narrows down your pipeline quite quickly after your discovery into real opportunities, which allows you to maximize your time and capacity on more likely to buy prospects who are willing to invest time with you to do that. Obviously, it sounds like you're heavily focused on the real deals in the pipeline and making them successful, not just short term, but long term, and kind of sets the expectation of what it's like to be your customer, it sounds like.
One thing worth highlighting though is when you do this long enough, you don't realize, but those workshops are just turning into a sales demo call without you realizing it. So there's a thin line between having a workshop and having a demo call. The major difference is a workshop should be something that you do once you commit. Could be a soft commitment, could be a verbal commitment, but once you commit to trying the product out. Whereas the demo is part of your evaluation process. So without knowing it, we turned our workshop meeting into another demo where the people were still evaluating it. So once we realized this recently and did another restructure, I don't know if it's going to work, but we wanted to get that verbal commitment without like scheduling that before we schedule that workshop. And if you don't get that commitment, even it could be as simple as, yes, I want to try this product. Simple as that. If you don't get this, we will not schedule the workshop and we should disqualify, because we are investing the effort. And now once the company scales, that opportunity cost of hosting that workshop is getting bigger and bigger. So we're not at this stage that we have to be wise about it. So it's a great idea. Like I would, if I did it this 100 more times, I would always include a CSM in the sales process. I think it worked out great. One thing I would definitely be careful about is making sure the CSM jumps in once there's some sort of soft commitment, so that you don't do a second demo call by the CSM, but they're just doing a workshop that they're helping people.
But I do like the demo being more of a hands-on workshop, which is a best practice versus just showing buttons. It's a, hey, based on what you're saying, right? The ideal discovery is uncovering what their needs are and their pain, and then showing a demonstration based on to solve those problems, not just to show buttons. And you're taking a step further and saying, you're going to actually use the product with us. We're going to build this together, right? So it's a demo, but it's way better than a demo. Handheld usage of the product. And it's kind of onboarding and setting them up for success.
Exactly that. So far, so good. I don't know how we would further scale this as the team grows. We'll find out.
I'm confident you'll figure it out. It sounds like you iterate rapidly based on the feedback.
We tried.
Bringing the CS person into the discovery calls, as you said, there's pros and cons with CS style or kind of approach versus sales approach. How is that? Is that working, or like what have you observed, or have you had any observations from what you were doing versus what she's doing?
It is working. What we're fine-tuning on the way is focusing more on outcomes and values rather than features. Because when you're in a customer success conversation, when the customer is bought into the idea, when they're using your product, they would consult your CS team to get tips on better using your product, to get tips on using some functionality that they haven't used before. Whereas that discovery call is more about evaluation, more about you assessing their problem, you having you should be able to evaluate if that's a good fit for you or not, because disqualification is important.
So it's like the more, like, I think the way I look at sales, and again, this is general stereotypes of like, it's more proactive, right? Where customer success or customer service definitely is reactive, right? So it's a little bit different. Whereas to do the discovery, you need to be proactive with asking them lots of questions before you become kind of reactive to answering their questions or solving their problems. So she needs to be on the offense, right? Where she's like really digging through to understand whether it's a fit versus trying to solve their problems before she even knows what they are.
And funnily, one great metric to track this is looking at the time distribution of every person speaking inside the call. Usually, like in workshop calls or in calls where we help existing customers, we tend to speak a lot more because we're explaining them the product. And one thing that we're trying to bring down when it's not a CS conversation, but it's a sales conversation, is to be able to control ourselves and dial down the time in that 30-minute discovery call that we're actively talking. That's a great metric. Like once that you bring that down with your CS team, that means they're now doing more of a sales work than CS work.
Yes. And so we discussed this a little bit before, but explain kind of your next step and your next kind of hiring or resource that you're going to bring in is going to be some BDRs to create more pipeline. Take me through that. What's the plan?
So I've been talking about and doing interviews for bringing in a founding AE for the last 8 to 12 months. So it's been like it's been a overdone conversation on my end. I have been planning for it because I always think it's time for us. Like it was time for us 6 months ago, it was time for us last year, it's time for us now.
Okay.
But whenever I put everything in front of me, I always have I start to think about more like inputs and everything. So last time I was almost about to bring someone on board. Like we had a couple of interviews, we spent time together. It was check, and then I was like, okay, I want to hire a full cycle AE, and when that person jumps in right now, we don't have the full pipeline to make him fully busy, right? So eventually I'll be hiring a very expensive BDR. Is it the right time for us to do that? Because we could do it for a lot less, and we could actually build that team where that team is a stepping stone for our future AEs, while we also build presence on different time zones and such. So we updated our plan. We started forming a BDR team that will be working with me. I'm now doing a bunch of interviews. We have already agreed with 2 people. So it will be a BDR team. And when I'm doing that interview, I'm always searching for a person that could become an AE in 6 months, so that we manage that person grows into that role. And when that person grows into that role, we have the full pipeline that we want. So we're solving another problem first.
I like it. I think obviously we discussed some of the pros and cons. I think the pros of this is that you're not going to have an AE with nothing to work on, right? Or a very expensive BDR. You'll have BDRs creating pipeline, and as you said, a career path, et cetera. Also, I think the pros with this, as you're doing now, you might have sales assist is your model.
It is.
And so the people that we hire, or the companies that I work with that we hire with product-led growth, you layer in sales assist folks, and sometimes they're more sales-minded customer success people or customer success-minded salespeople that are a bit of a hybrid. And so bringing in an AE right now to do outbound when they're kind of the alpha seller doesn't align really well with what your model is. But you may have to hire another CS person quite quickly with your sales assist when your BDRs are starting to become successful. And the good thing about that model is that, assuming you can manage these BDRs and getting them productive, you can shape them into the hybrid sales assist folks from the get-go. You can mold them into what you need and promote the ones that are good at it versus having to hire salespeople from the outside. So now that you've given me this context, I think this makes a bit more sense. Although I do think there is the The con of it is that the BDRs are junior. They take more management, right? There's usually more effort that you need to put into it. They have less, and being junior, they have less wisdom in seeing kind of the bigger picture, right? And where they fit into the whole bigger picture. And they're not going to be able to move into a sales role as fast because they just are less mature. So it just takes longer. If they do create lots of pipeline, you can't move them up too fast. You're still going to have to make another hire, right? And whereas you have an account executive, they come in, they bring the IQ, they up level your sales game, assuming if you need that, I don't know, especially with this model, it seems to be working. And they bring more wisdom and the ability to create pipeline. But they are a very expensive BDR, and you have to be very deliberate in ensuring that they're not selling until they've created the playbook for pipeline creation so that you can add more people. But I think I like your approach is really interesting with a product-led growth kind of sales assist model. And you already do have an account executive. You've hired a CS person, but she's your sales rep. So it's not actually, you have a founding account executive. You do. I mean, she just was in sales. She's a CS now doing sales assist. So I actually don't think, and she can help with the capacity challenges that the BDRs might create, which is still a challenge, but it's a good.
I like your notion of bringing in additional sales IQ to the team, because I think that is something we could really benefit from and have been snoozing it for a very long time. So yeah, that your suggestion of bringing in a full cycle AE so that they get full hands-on, get to know each and every stage of the buying journey makes a lot of
But
sense.
you have to handcuff them to only
Yes.
doing BDR work because they
Yeah.
want to go close, but they need to do that and they need to leave. And I think it's a specific type. You're going to want someone who can do BDR work, but also wants to do the sales assist. So someone who probably has product-led growth sales experience, because those companies kind of are training that sales assist mindset versus kind of sales-led, which is trying to just get them to buy, right, versus seeing the value.
Like another perspective for the same problem could be like, I'll give you an example. In December, so around a month and a half ago, we closed our largest deal. It's a US based
Congrats.
company.
That's nice.
Took us 6 months. Like, I'm asking to myself, I would, in any part of that process, I would never be able to leave everything, delegate it to someone from the team, and just hope everything goes well and do regular check-ins. So that's what prompted me to invest into a BDR team first, because I realized I would never be able to get out of those sales conversations anyway. So the best thing would be for people to grow into that role. In the meantime, we could build mutual trust. And being the product person I am, I see how it works. I measure the results and I iterate that process. And we could always bring in a salesperson. Of course, it takes time. Of course, they will ramp up. I know. But we could always make that decision later if we think this is a bad one. And we would probably find out in 3 months.
I think this goes back to an interview that we did with Mac 2 weeks ago, that he had pressure from investors early on to scale quickly, right? And so if you don't have that pressure, you can be very methodical and grow healthy, right? Versus if you had some metrics to get to by the end of Q1, you had to get there, Q2, right? You need to 4x revenue this year. Like you don't have and you have the capital to do it. You're going to have that pressure to say, actually, it's not just a test of one. You're going to hire a few of them and you're going to go and you're going to break stuff and figure it out as you go, which you're managing that so you don't have to worry about that type of pressure to kind of figure it out fast. I mean, you are figuring it out fast. You have that pressure, but you're not kind of going down the blitz scaling route that clearly causes chaos and has some negative ramifications.
We do have investors in the cap table. Of course, they expect us to grow at a certain pace. But like what we tell them is we see the sales motion changing. We see it's becoming more about systems than people. So scaling, like bringing in more revenue, is not always about adding new people to the team. It's about having the right foundations. And I see a lot of companies, like some of them in our space, some of them in different areas. It's like a rule of thumb that has been in the SaaS world for the last 20 years. If you want to scale, you should bring in new people. We decided to play a different game. We decided to set the foundation straight and maybe invest in those systems first before we plug in different people into those systems to scale them. And having a founder build that system, I think has a different value add. Like I might be terribly wrong, but so far I see this to be very much in line with how the industry is getting shaped.
Yes.
Everything is getting commoditized. Like 2 years from now, everyone will be sending the same emails because we're not writing those emails anymore. So it's about the tooling, the system that you built, and it's about how creatively you position your product for your prospects. Even the best salespeople that you plug into the team in the early days will not be able to do that as deep as the founder does. So that's what we're trying to do differently at Flowla.
I think that makes a lot of sense. I think this is an exciting time for you. Maybe I'll get you out of here with one more question. So this is one we ask everybody. What is the worst advice that you think exists in sales or that you've received?
I think, like, I always try to position against the idea of a salesperson that says, sell me this pen. Again, maybe connecting this to the fact that doing founder sales as the product person I am, I think we always assume sales is more about being an extrovert, being present, being very aggressive. That's why we found out at Flowla that our customer success manager is doing a great job at sales. People want confidence to say yes, and the sales like that we know of is not building confidence anymore because that person is not fully aware of the entire product, but is good at painting that picture. And today's buyers smell that from a mile away. So not the worst advice maybe, but the bad perspective that we fight against is making sure whoever is selling that product, selling in air quotations, knows the product inside out, knows what it can and can't do, and has the ability to answer complex buyer questions. Because unless that happens, it doesn't matter how great it is at writing that follow-up email after the conversation.
Yeah, that's great advice. Well, thank you so much for joining. Hopefully we can have you back in 6 months. It sounds like we're going to learn a lot in just the next 6 months of your journey. But have a wonderful day. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you for having me. It was a pleasure.